potentially be Rey's mom. Timeline-wise, it works out, right? In terms of appearance, it works out. You just got to fill in the blanks of how all of that would go and play out. So we don't have, obviously, any evidence of that. So if you're going to discuss, in my opinion, if you're going to discuss the idea that Jyn Erso in Rogue One, the prequel to A New Hope, is Rey's mom, then you should discuss it from a standpoint of what does that do to the universe, and what is the intention of Disney Lucasfilm in tying those two together, and does it make sense? The biggest argument I've heard against it, and I've heard several people say this on different podcasts since the trailers come out, and that is, well, they don't, the argument that people have against Jyn being Rey's mom is that, well, we don't want the universe to get too small. You know, why do all these people have to be connected to one another? You know, why can't she just be somebody else? And that, look, it's a legitimate argument, but let me also add something that it doesn't seem like I ever hear anybody say, and that is, we're the watchers, we're the viewers, we're being told these specific stories. You know, she may be the main focal point and the driving force behind going and stealing the plans to the Death Star, but there are other stories and other people out there. We're just not hearing those other stories and other people. We're hearing about her story. And so we are intentionally being we're being intentionally led down a path to show how all of these things fit together. And so I'm totally okay with that. It's almost like, and I did hear somebody go and bring this up, it's almost like Disney is doing what Marvel did with the comic books, but doing it off of movies. In the comic books, you have all these characters that are all intertwined. And it's happened throughout the course of, decades, if you will, of comic book writing and different storytellers. Well, what Star Wars and Disney and Lucasfilm have to do is that there's a rich background, there's a rich, vast, large universe with a very small cast of characters. And so the story group's job, in my opinion, is to go and begin to introduce characters that can now be intertwined with the characters that already exist. That's the way I see it. I like the idea of, let's have Rogue One be the first spin-off movie, essentially a prequel, that ties right into A New Hope, and let's use that opportunity to give you the backstory of who Rey's mom is. That makes all the sense in the world to me. Let me go this way. What if Jyn Erso is Rey's mom, and she hooked up and married Luke at some point that we haven't seen yet, and there never was a Rogue One movie? So let's say in episode 3, we are off on our adventure with Luke Skywalker and now a being trained Rey, and Luke, let's just, for the sake of argument, say that Rey's mom died at some point. Luke tells Rey the story about his mom. Your mom died at this point in time between, Return of the Jedi for the viewer and The Force Awakens, okay? Maybe her mom was killed at the hands of Kylo Ren when he went and wiped out Luke's new Jedi Academy. And Luke tells the story of Jyn to Rey and says, when I met her, she was a part of the rebellion. Your mom was actually one of the main people responsible for giving the rebellion the plans to the Death Star that I blew up. You wouldn't think twice about that. At least I don't. Well, I mean, okay, we're Star Wars fans. Of course we would think twice about it. You wouldn't have a whole lot of controversy around that. I think as a viewer, you'd be like, oh, wait, that's cool. Even if you didn't have the movie. Well, we're going to get the movie. And by the way, how interesting is that, and how much does that actually make sense? I'm going to get ahead of myself because I was going to cap the podcast off with this point, but maybe I'll do it here before we move forward. I will do it here before we move forward. How cool would it be if Jyn Erso, the one who stole the plans for the Death Star, right, ends up being the one who connects with Luke Skywalker, the one who blew up the Death Star? See, here's what I envision, and this is where I was going to end the podcast, but since we're talking about it now, I don't want to hold out. What if at the end of Rogue One, we know that a lot of these characters are probably going to die, okay, not all, but a lot of them are, because we don't see them anywhere else, at least yet. I'm sure that some of them could possibly just get absorbed into the rebellion and fade off into the background of episodes 4, 5, and 6. But you got to figure someone like Jyn would be a pretty big part, you would think, of this. Of the other movies, you know, considering that she's going to have a huge role in this, and we don't know a lot about that. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's say she lives through this battle. You know, the opening crawl for A New Hope gives us a glimpse into what we can expect. You know, the rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the Galactic Empire, right? Or I'm paraphrasing, but that's the opening line of the crawl. That's what this story is about. Rebel ships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory. In the process, they steal the plans for the Death Star. So you know you're going to get rebel ships striking from a hidden base, winning something against the Empire and stealing the plans. Well, what if at the end of, or let's say that Jyn gets hurt. Let's say that she gets jacked up in Rogue One at the end of the movie. She succeeds in her mission, but she pays a price for it and ends up getting wounded and ends up in a rebel hospital. How cool would this be? She's in the hospital. They've already beamed the plans to Princess Leia, right? Darth Vader in A New Hope says, you know, the plans have been beamed to the ship by rebel spies. I want to know what happened to the plans they sent you. Okay, so what if she's in the hospital? And what if we actually jump in time? Because you don't got to jump far in time. When you consider the length of time from the beginning to the end of A New Hope, well, it's just a couple days, right? Barely? I mean, Princess Leia never changed her clothes. I mean, so a few days take place. Well, so what if Rogue One ends right before A New Hope begins? And in Rogue One, we actually, the very end is we have Jyn in the hospital recovering, and one of the Rebel Alliance soldiers shows up to her hospital bed and says, they did it, they succeeded, they blew up the Death Star. Right? And Jyn then says, well, who was responsible? Or maybe the person, the Rebel Alliance, the member of the Rebel Alliance comes to Jyn and says, hey, one of our Rebel pilots did it. Because of you and your plans, one of our Rebel pilots went and blew up the Death Star. And a recovering Jyn in the hospital says, what's his name? I mean, come on, right? And then we can get we get an idea that she's now found out about Luke Skywalker, and that begins the storyline going down the road, where we eventually find out the backstory of how Jyn ended up meeting Luke. I think that's a cool idea. All right. So, and I wiped out on this way more than I wanted to, but I like that idea a lot. So as we move forward, and we're going to go back to the trailer here. It could be that Jyn Erso is just Jyn Erso and she bites at the end of the movie and there's no connection there at all. If she happens to end up, and this ends up being the backstory to Rey's mom, I personally think that is a masterstroke on Disney's part. I think that would be pure genius. The only question that I have is, at what point does Disney let on? I would think that you wouldn't find out in Rogue One. I would think you would find out in Episode 3. That's what I would think. And if you're looking for a big reveal, right? You know, you do something where there is some type of tie-in, some type of speculation, something at the end of Rogue One, like the scenario I laid out, that gets you thinking that perhaps, maybe, just maybe, Jyn could be Rey's mom, but you don't know definitively, and it gets the fandom speculating. Then when you get to episode 3, Luke has that story with Rey and says, yeah, your mom's name was Jyn, and she was a rebel fighter. I met her, after the destruction of the Death Star 2, and we hooked up and we got married, and right? I think that's genius. But what do I know? I'm a talk show host. All right, let's get back to the to the trailer. How cool is that, by the way? The warning sound from the original Death Star, inside the Death Star, right? Different from the one that was in The Empire Strikes Back. Not the Aruga. I mean, similar, but different. When I first heard it, I thought it was the Aruga when, and I guess the one scene that pops up most in my head is when the Millennium Falcon is escaping from Hoth and the 2 Star Destroyers, kind of end up colliding side by side with each other. But that's different. This is the actual noise that takes place on the Death Star.
What will you do when they catch you?
Forrest Whitaker.
What will you do if they break you? If you continue to fight? What will you become?
I love what they've done with the music here. Because, see, right there at the end, let me play this again. A little bit of the Force theme. And a little bit of the Imperial March. Right? So Vader's going to be in the movie. I have voice crack there. I'm surprised I've lasted this long, to be honest with you. So Vader's going to be in the movie. We just don't know where yet, and we haven't seen him. And I agree with most of those who have been speculating on this, that it was a good thing that they did not include Vader in this trailer. They don't need to show him yet. They just need to get everybody hyped. All right, so a couple things about the trailer in and of itself. Love the vibe we're getting. It looks like it's going to be gritty. My only concern has always been sort of the pacing of Gareth Edwards. I liked Godzilla a lot, but I thought the pacing was really off. But that's something that's easily fixable. I mean, even when you think back to A New Hope and the amount of editing they had to do to get that movie to sort of move along at a much faster pace, you can handle that. Everything that I've seen in this trailer really hyped my expectations. We hadn't really seen anything yet, and I didn't know what kind of vibe we were going to get. And it really seems as if they are zeroing in on the aesthetic really, really well. You're going to have to accept the fact that it's going to look better than A New Hope. Watching A New Hope last night, because I didn't end up going into work today, I had a chance to stay up and watch it last night. And watching it, still love the movie. I mean, I do. I mean, still just find it so much fun to watch, so enjoyable. But, in retrospect, when you look at it compared to even Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and certainly The Force Awakens, it's dated. There's no way to get around it. It's not nearly as bad as 99% of the movies from that era. It holds up, but you're going to have to get over the fact that Rogue One is not going to have that same type of feel or pacing. I mean, the pacing of Star Wars is very slow, but it's clear that they're getting the aesthetic right. I thought the walkers looked spectacular. What we saw, the stormtroopers, you have the one different-looking trooper that has the elongated mask, helmet with the elongated piece in the front. We saw some black stormtroopers, which we believe are shadow troopers. A tank in the background. There was a shuttle that was blown up that was very reminiscent of the shuttle Tidarium. It also was an almost exact, it matches almost exactly with the Force Awakens artwork that was being done for Kylo Ren's command shuttle for The Force Awakens. There was a piece of concept art that actually has that ship in the Force Awakens art book, so it's really cool. You have the Ben Mendelsohn character that everybody is pegging. Well, everybody is being reminded of Grand Admiral Thrawn from the now Legends, from the Expanded Universe books. Grand Admiral Thrawn essentially looks just like Ben Mendelsohn, except he's got blue skin